Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Guns of Navarone, RMP, Troy Shuka, Bosnail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, theflatearthchannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, and David Wayne Foster. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now, I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Google and Discord so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Not to get political, but that was my conversation with the Russian lady today.
Ah, that's wonderful. See, that was the reason for you to miss that bus. I always take advantage of those things.
So this guy called me up now, the mechanic. He's like, you tell me what's wrong. So I told him. So he basically has to take both my vehicles there because they're giving me a hard time where I am, saying that I have no plates on my Mercedes, that I can't keep it parked there. So I asked him to send this tow for both of them. He's like, what are you going to do with the Mercedes? Where are you going to keep that? I said, well, I want to fix it. I mean, it's still running. Just making it, I think it's something to do with the drive shaft. He's like, yeah, but that ain't worth putting no money into. Parts are expensive. It's only me and another guy. I'm like, dude, you had the whole summer to work on the Nissan and get it running right. Then I was going to test drive it again. If I liked it, I was going to buy it. But the situation called where you told me, just bring it back in after the holidays and you take care of it. When I brought it back in, you gave me an extension on the freaking, what do you call it? You know, the inspection shit. And this happens. I got to tell you, I got no luck with cars.
Oh, we're talking about cars.
I could take one right out of the showroom and something will happen. I guarantee it.
Sure. Whoever listens to this pre-show is going to say, oh, you think you got a story with cars. Let me tell you.
Our Earth Debate.
See, I know what I could get away with Nathan, because Nathan's into cars. Can't get away with politics with Nathan. He'll shut you down. But cars, you can get him talking.
And sound.
Forget about it. Sound, forget about it. It's like diarrhea. He never stops.
Nathan, you're going to take that?
Well,
yeah, I'll take that. It's totally true. Go ahead, Crit.
I will say Neil's coming in hot, just getting roasted. They try to stay on the good side today.
It's all true, so I can't really argue with
We're
him.
not going to go to sound because it's true. We're not going to go to cars because it's true. Let's go flat Earth because it's true.
But Nathan, I think you were right on point earlier. I think you're 100% right. That explains everything.
Yeah, I want to get a few more opinions on it, so I don't know if you've done that just to throw a spoiler in or an in-joke in or whatever. Yeah. Poor taste.
Yeah, he did.
Unintentionally.
Intentionally.
Yeah, we were talking about a psychological aspect, and given that it's a pseudoscience, it's something that I'm hesitant, that's the word, to talk about. So there we go. But I'll get a few more opinions. Maybe it'll come up on the show one day.
Yeah, it will. I'll bring it up. Yeah, it's a description. So if you use it as a description, and we have plenty of individuals acting out that description in real time, then it fits. It fits. It may not be the whole thing. It could be part of it. Like life is that way, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, again, I've got to give more detail now to the audience. So it's just in regards to some of the behavioural patterns that we see on the show. And yeah, so I won't say any more than that. Let's just leave it there.
You got it. The body of science.
Hold on. Anyway, there's a reason why they put this delusion in place in the first place.
Neil, don't you?
Oh, wait a second. Everybody wasn't privy to that call? Oh, I'm sorry.
You crack me up, man.
It's all good.
He's an excellent witness. What?
Wise guy.
So
Huh?
let's go.
It's like the mafia guys when they get caught. The cops say it takes one smack to get him to talk and 1,000 smacks to get him to shut up.
That was classic. That's beautiful. Oh, gosh, now
Hey.
you're on the roll this morning.
Hey, John, by the way. Hello. He's obviously
It's
sloped
not
off.
for long because my battery is undead, so I got to step out and charge for a while. But I'm listening.
Okie doke.
All right. So the body of science, we discussed that yesterday's show, how Rumpus always uses that, or did use that. And now not just Rumpus, but everybody else is going away from anything from science, because science doesn't prove things. To be in a position to be using something, then later saying, oh, I can't use that argument because it hurts me, so I won't use it anymore, is what I'm thinking.
Yes, they say science doesn't prove things, but that's all it does.
I made this meme where it shows Obi-Wan Kenobi on the high ground, and he says, "Don't try it, atheist globalist. Flat Earther has the high ground." And then Anakin's like, "You don't understand the power of the rumpus." And then the next image below is like Anakin's burning body. It says the body of science.
Love it.
Yeah, he said
I'm trying to
science
find the
doesn't
right.
prove things. It just infers. Well, why do you think we have the science department for? So we can get away from inference. It's the opposite.
Did you know that Darth Vader's actually pretty crude in terms of his technological ability, the suit that he utilizes, that he was given after that you've just described? In the narrative, it's actually crappy intentionally. You know that?
No.
Yeah, Darth is given an intentionally inferior suit, so to speak. The mechanics of his suit are crappy.
And the reason for that?
Keep him under control.
I figured you
Really-
would say that.
Yeah, because he would have destroyed the Emperor. Are you kidding me? He had to keep him like a half crippled.
Yeah, weak. Exactly.
Always in pain too. Like the suit was, like overly cumbersome and like really hard to eat and drink and use the bathroom and stuff. So he was always pissed off. Like, so he never really got a chance to just settle down and clear his mind and meditate and see what he was doing.
That was a perfect pun. Know what you just did?
Yeah, about clearing.
No, you said you said the suit was hard. He could use the bathroom, but he's always pissed off.
I thought it
Oh,
was,
that
thought it was too obvious. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, we actually on that I know Gamma Panda server we were talking about something similar with when Magneto helped Quicksilver when Apocalypse was going to kill him. And it was like the same thing what happened with Darth Vader. Like he finally broke out of his mindset once he realized that Luke was going to be killed by the Emperor. So the question is like, how many of you globalists here would reject your own children if they became flat earthers?
Father,
And sadly,
please!
about half of them said yes, they would.
Which leads into
That's
a
how
joke where
chained to the ball they are.
leads into a nice
sorry,
little...
Nathan, go ahead.
Sorry, my bad.
No, I didn't hear you talking. I kept going.
I was interrupting. I thought you'd finished. I was interrupting you. Sorry.
Yeah, the last point I was going to say is that's how chained to the globe they are, that their own flesh and blood that they'll reject for this fantasy model.
Well, it's not just particular to that. It's politics. It's all types of religious positions that people have, make them disassociate themselves from their kids, and vice versa. People fight over sports teams, believe it or not, don't talk to each other. I mean, it's just a condition of a human being to be so serious about something to where they're willing to cut off everybody.
You don't know the power of the heliocentric model. I must obey my master.
What's gotten into Neil today?
Start talking Star Wars right up my alley.
So you're saying, would you disavow your own child, which leads me to consider a scenario where, the mother walks into the child's bedroom and she can only see the back of the child, and he's clearly looking at something on his computer, and she goes, "What are you looking at?" And the child turns around and goes, "It's porn, it's porn!" She looks on the computer and there's an azimuthal equidistant projection on there, and she goes, "No! Why couldn't it be porn?"
That's awesome. That should be turned into a meme.
The reason it can't be porn because they can't handle the naked truth.
Boom, boom.
Stop beating around the bush.
Boom, boom.
Well, I actually set out a challenge to Mr. Blue Marble Science that keeps running away. Wonder why that is.
What was your challenge?
Why you're chasing after some fundy zealot to give you attention? I don't know. Why is that? You tell me.
Maybe,
you know.
Maybe because I'm bored, and it was a fun thing to do, to make him look stupid, which he's doing himself though. No, I'm just sick of him making claims and can't back it up, that's all.
But there's a bit of sadism in there too, from what you've just said.
Yeah, but I think you get to a point where you just get tired of listening to the same garbage without backup. You know what I'm saying? If you make a claim, just back it up. It's as simple as that.
I don't know why you waste your time. I don't know why you give these people your attention. Don't get me wrong, I get to hear about it here as you tell me about how much attention you've given them, and without it, I probably wouldn't have a show. So I should be careful what I say, really.
You're two positions removed.
Well, from this chair, I don't care about what they do, and yeah, obviously I'll sit and listen to the position that you take now, and I'm not intentionally, well, I am deliberately and intentionally and overtly trying to belittle it, but for only humorous reasons, you understand, Flatsoid. Feel free to tell us all about the scenario.
Don't worry, I'll wait for the show. Because I actually got, I already put it in last night, the Messi's response. It's actually quite hilarious. Contradiction in his own statement.
Now, what was the statement?
I'll quickly get it up.
Okie dokie. Da, 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 da. Enough time? Da, 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 dun. I don't know the ending. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, I'll put in Master B.
You put it in Master B. Excellent. Good timing, as I've just run out of notes. Okey doke. Do you want to read it out? I've got it up.
I read your description, and I'm not going to respond to a straw man like that. You've been programmed to spout this single vector bullshit, and nobody makes that claim. This is what happens when you listen to people like Nathan and QE, who are both technically illiterate dipshits. I can prove gravity acts like a force, and I can prove a force will create a pressure gradient in a gas. That's game over. Isn't it funny how he claims he didn't say that and it says it in the same comment?
Just got one word that I want to know what it means. What's acts? If I act like a child, for example, that doesn't make me a child. And the fact that he can prove that gravity acts like a force?
Sounds like another
thing
way
is,
of saying you can think of it as a force.
Doesn't it?
That's what it
Yeah, but
sounds
here's
like
the
to me.
thing, Nathan. Nathan, if I calculate that you're acting like a child, then that makes it true.
What you're saying is if you provide me with maths that demonstrate by way of behavioural psychology what age range I would be subsequently categorised in, that would make me a child by definition and mathematics.
Yeah, I can mathematically bring you into existence just by doing a bit of maths. Wow, that's fucking loud. Who's that?
Yeah, who's that? That's Flatzoid.
Lloyd.
Oh, shit, sorry.
No swearing.
I did mute it, but I'm in the booth, so it probably went on again.
Yes,
Thanks for
mumble,
the
mumble,
explanation.
in a booth, mumble, mumble.
Yeah. So this is where I got to on mine, Nathan. That video I did yesterday. Basically, we've got Einstein that can calculate the effect that he observes. We've got Newton that calculates the effect that he observed. We've got me that can calculate the effect that I observe, but I can also demonstrate my calculation to be true. They can't demonstrate, they can only calculate. So which is the stronger piece of evidence? Is it the one that calculates and then demonstrates, or is it the one that stops at calculation only?
Well, the one that demonstrates empirically what the cause was, which is the one
Which is
that
where-
is into the method, right? Which one's that?
Yeah, of course. That would be me, the
That would be the one that you did, right?
Where are we calculating in science again?
We're not.
Isn't science supposed to be quantitative?
Correct.
I know, yeah. I'm only doing it to appease them because they think that mathematics makes their position with Einstein. But they don't realize that when they're calculating with Einstein or with Newton, the fact that they're both calculating the same phenomena means that it's correlative, yet that's the standard that they're applying. And I was like, right, okay, then I'll just calculate it too. And I just demonstrate that the calculation is the same. And then therefore we're all now three of us are correlating, right?
Hold on, did
But
you
the
say
trouble is
that?
I can demonstrate.
Did you say they're calculating the same phenomena? Because they are not.
Well, they say they're calculating the same phenomena.
Well, one phenomena that was claimed was superseded by a conceptual medium bending. So mass attracting mass.
I know, yeah, but they conflate between the two as though they're one and the same. I know technically there's slightly an ever so slight difference at light speeds and
Slightly?
shit like that. But
Slightly. They're in completely different dimensions.
I know, but they're calculating the same phenomena. They say.
Same phenomena. Bending space-time versus mass attracting mass is not the same thing in any way, shape, or form. Descriptively or otherwise,
I agree with
semantically
you.
or
I
otherwise,
agree.
they're not the same. They're not even in the same geometry.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is that they say that. So I then use that and say, okay, so if you've got person A and person B that are calculating what you say is the same phenomenon, now you've got person C that's also claiming that there's a calculation for the phenomena. The only difference is I can demonstrate what makes that thing move. They can't, and they don't like it.
That thing moving in your example was upwards.
Yeah, I want to know what made gravity decide to work on the medium instead to create that upwards thrust. What did gravity have a day off?
Do you want a baller answer? No, it's only the down bit. It's mostly down. Mostly down. Go boom boom. Mostly.
Yeah. We ignore the 0.1% that goes up.
Mostly. What's that from? Oh, it's from Aliens. Of course it is. Most quotable movie ever. It all goes down. Mostly.
It's interesting that most flat earthers, like the ones that are on the fence that are not quite sure which way to jump, we haven't pushed it enough yet, but the aerogel bit being like 6 times more dense than the air, that's the phenomena that they believe they're observing. But when they realize that all objects of mass, that were at least stuff that we're aware of anyway, are more dense than air, and that's the perceived bias that they think's a phenomena. But when you realize it's actually a state of ignorance on your behalf, then all of a sudden there's no phenomena there anymore, and we do know why things move. So I'm hoping to push that point a lot more because I realise that people don't, at the minute, don't really get it. It's coming though. It's coming.
Baby steps.
I think people get it.
I don't know
No,
what you
I've
guys are talking about. Rumpus says science is about measuring numbers, so you guys are all wrong.
Not
Yeah,
manipulating the presumed cause.
Yeah, who needs experiment to be scientific? Come on.
Okay.
Science.
Just as I've just taken it off screen, thank you for sharing that, Flatsoid, by the way.
That subject is covered in so much sophistry, I doubt a normal person would get it.
What's normal?
Anyone that's never heard
That's
that
a
there was
philosophical-
actually a debate.
That's a philosophical question. What's normal?
A collection of averages.
Yeah. A perceived state that is acceptable to be in the middle.
It's
Hence
funny
why
'cause somebody came into 24/7 one day like a troll, and he came in and he called us all the flat earthers. He said, "Oh, you guys are a bunch of normies." We were like, "What? what is that? Wait, what is that an insult or what? I don't understand." None of us understood. We were like,
It's just
"Okay."
accurate. If you want to consider a
You
mental
normies.
state, then we're normal. If normie means normal, then we're normal. We don't suffer any delusions. So we're not under the misapprehension that we're on a sphere-shaped rock flying through a vacuum and spinning.
Right. So I was like, I mean, if we're normies, what does that make you? Like a weirdo?
A fundamentalist. I can tell you that's that too. A fundamentalist religious zealot.
Hey, there you go.
Okay, so I shared this story in the after show the other day. So I sat down with this golfer that I'm working with, and I talked to him about flat Earth for the first time. He got it, no problem. I went through the housekeeping questions, the top three. Told him what I'm doing with the sextant when it's used for navigation, how it can't work on the curved surface. He says, "Oh my gosh, that's." He says, "Look, I took geometry. This totally makes sense to me." And so when I say they get it, they get it. Now, he got it, and he's going to look into it more. Other people get it, but they have a conflict. There's two thoughts in their heads at one time. Well, how could it be? Why would they do this? So they do that instead of researching it. Then you got the super trenchers like Rumpus, who are just in always contradiction in the way they speak. So they're violating the law of non-contradiction. So that's good for the show because a normie can just listen to that and say, wait a minute, I got it. Why is he doing that? He's contradicting himself. Science doesn't prove things. So, the body of science. So he's holding two positions. Whenever it's convenient, he goes to the one.
I'm not talking about those questions. I'm talking about the actual gravity argument that seems to be happening. It's just full of sophistry is pretty much it.
You're right. But how many normies have a gravity argument?
Anybody you ask out on the street when you drop something, what caused it? Even if you let go of a balloon,
I know.
say gravity.
It's more dense than the medium because all objects of mass are greater than density in the air. But you're right. Everyone thinks it's gravity, right? And no one ever questions it because it's never really been brought up as a contentious issue. But once you realise it is contentious, and if you were told that in school when they told it I wouldn't have got to 36 before I started questioning it. I wouldn't got to 40 and realised it was a lie. But if I'd have been told it when I was 16, that would have made me think more about science than considering that everything was already established and I didn't need to learn it because it was already known and therefore, I'm an insignificant speck of dust. If somebody would have said to me, gravity's not proven science and you can believe it if you want to, but it's not within scientific method, that would have been like, what? What are you talking about?
They didn't.
I took this.
Sorry. They didn't, though, did they? They did the metaphor of what happens in the Truman Show when he's a young boy in front of the teacher and he starts questioning the world. And she pulls down a map, says, it's already been figured out. There's nothing to discover.
Yeah, I remember that scene. So when I was talking to this guy, we were sitting at a table and there was a fork on the table. And I said, you think gravity's keeping this fork down? And he just looked at me and I go, if I pick it up, and I did, if I let go, what's going to happen? It's just going to fall down. I go, why is it falling down? And I went through what Anthony said, the medium, the denser, and so forth. And he says, wow, that makes so much sense.
It does. It's so intuitive.
It's so obvious.
And then, like, if you change the medium and then it causes something to start to move up, like the egg, then that works for everything. That's why the steel anvil floats in the mercury, because it's more the mercury is more dense than the anvil, so it pushes it up, it displaces it, right? It's all got to be done inside a container, but nonetheless, it does it.
Right. So I took the fork and I held it over the table to where the only thing that would support the fork when I let go would be the floor about 3 feet down. And I said, okay, so now if I let go, where it's going? He says, it's going to hit the floor. I go, will the floor hold it up? He goes, yeah. And I go, why? He says, because it's denser. And I go, but here the table got in the way because it's denser, right? He goes, right. He goes, I get it.
Helium balloons rock in that example.
Yeah, I brought that too.
Helium balloons are less dense, not rock. Hello, Domino's Pizza. Can I take your order? Wow, that phone call killed the conversation.
Well, I was waiting for someone to order pizza.
Wow, I was just looking at something taking not a single vector.
No universal bias down or up.
Yeah, apparently not.
No way, that
I
was a
heard
cold call. That was a cold call from an insurance company trying to get me to update my life insurance. I didn't even get to the point where I asked them not to call me again. They just hung up.
What's your wife's insurance?
Life insurance.
I don't know. Why are you trying to get your wife's insurance?
Doesn't want to have a paranoid ghost that's all worried about finances and stuff.
Well, in the fundamental difference between the two gravities is one's claimed to be a force and the other is like one's a pulling force and the other is claimed to be a push.
No.
So they can't be the same thing.
No, close. One's claimed to be a force, the other is claimed to be not a force. Have you never seen the presentation by QE where he brings up about 25 citations where it's described as, quote, not a force, end quote, by about 20 different people? For example, not as a force, but as the bending of space-time is how it will get described. Not as a force.
Well, that's a perfect description of what we're talking about. So they hold two positions at one time. It's a force, but it's also not a force. Have you taken your your meds yet? I mean, my goodness, who could say that?
You don't understand. It's just acting.
Acting?
Yeah, it's acting like a force. You know, not a force, but acting like a force.
Yeah, I could think of it as a force, but it's not really a force. But then it's a force when you want it to be a force.
No, it'll be acting like a force when I want it to be a force. It's not a force. Well, much like the Earth curve, and the horizon was the Earth curve, blocking the bottoms of boats and buildings, the thing on gravity was, that's what keeps us down. It's this force keeping everything down. That's why things fall. So
excuse me, nobody claims that. Thank you.
Yeah, nobody claims the horizon is Earth curve. Can you just correct that, please?
Yeah, this is the nonsense we have to deal with. They come in with two positions. They argue ours and theirs at the same time and think they won.
Yeah, they're delusional. In the face of contrary evidence that completely dismantles their fundamentalist belief in whatever it may be, gravity in this example, they will still hold on to it and either hold both positions, in which case cognitive dissonance ensues when they're here, verbalizing their simultaneously holding of two positions.
They do that with surveying. They do that when they do navigation and the use of the sextant. They have to pretend the Earth is flat when they use it, and then they say it's curved.
Yep.
I like it. I like the topic, the show, the way this gets broken down here, and I could share these things with normies, and it's like, where'd you learn this stuff?
Be here or be sphere, flat Earth debate. The Fundy muting I'm not going to tolerate anymore, by the way. So I listened back to yesterday's show, and basically the second the Rumpus attempted to obfuscate and ignore what was being put to him, I just kicked him out, and that's how it will continue.
Good.
As soon as you start interrupting the position that's being put to you, when you don't have a justification for interrupting other than to reassert your position again, which is all they do, then one chance, then you get told off. If you're a normie, then you get kicked out.
Well, I knew that was what was happening in the background, because obviously I can hear him talking, and I know that you're muting him, but because I know that you're muting him to shut him up so that I can get my point out to the audience, because I knew that's what you were doing, I could confidently carry on talking knowing that you just muted him. So my point gets across to the audience, because no matter what he says, depending on which way he steers the conversation, there are valid opposing and counter arguments that devastate his point now. Now, 18 months ago, I wasn't in that position, but now I am. And it's like, no matter where you take this Rumpus, I can kill you. And that's why he goes, you don't know what you're doing, and does all that talking stuff, because he can't be cornered. He will not, he won't allow the conversation to corner him, because he gets cornered and he has to concede, and he won't ever concede. That's what they're doing.
Well, it's a pathetic, shouldn't be required, right? If you're on the winning side of the argument, you just need to make your point. Your point will stand. It won't be capable of being challenged or rebutted in a way that's actually taking the argument to pieces if it's a winning argument. Now, if you haven't got a winning argument, you just need to make damn sure that your opponent's winning argument doesn't reach you, so you have to address it, or anybody else if you can obfuscate it and talk through it so it's not heard. And that's the only tactic they've got left. Just make sure that the opponent's position doesn't get heard clearly.
Anthony, do you remember when the Black Swan first came out, Rumpus came on the show? You and Ranty went into another show with him, an after show that went over 2 hours. On that show, Rumpus ran out of every explanation. He'd come up and he finally settled on, well, it must be the Matrix then. Now he's arguing the Black Swan from a different position, which is still wrong. But he was so flabbergasted when it first came out that he blamed the Matrix. And we're saying, no, it's geometry.
I don't actually remember that, but all avenues that Rumpus takes results in death. But he knows it as well. This is what's interesting about Rumpus, because most of the normies don't come in because they know they're going to get cornered and battered and they don't like it. But Rumpus knows he's going to get cornered, battered, and he comes in anyway. So it's like, whoa, this is like interesting psychology here, because it's like he knows he's going to get battered. He must believe his prowess in obfuscation of. He's called the Rumpus, isn't he? He must believe that his prowess at being a Rumpus is elite, and that's why the only reason he comes in.
He seeks attention, and if he gets attention this way or that way, he gets it. Either way, he gets attention. That's what he wants.
He had faith.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now, we are joined by Sleeping Warrior, 10th Man, Neil, Chocolate Saiyan, John, Flatsoid, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all. Did I say 10th Man as well? 10th Man. Welcome. Hello, Nathan. It's good to be here.
Hello, great to be here. How's it going?
Hello.
Hola, amigo.
Hola.
Good morning.
Hola, gringo. So, let's rattle through housekeeping, Nathan.
Oh, have you got something to get to? Rattle through, as in do it quickly. Have you got something pressing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Pressing.
okay.
Yeah, into the vacuum of space. Yeah.
I'll take that as a no. Any
No, I
evidence?
have got something to get to.
Oh, okay. No, okay, fair enough. Any evidence of a physical, geometric, sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature? Go on, George.
Nope.
I think the silent.
Hold on, Flatsoid.
Tells you.
Go on, George.
I think the
No. Water always finds its level. Not at all.
Go on, Flatsoid.
saying I think the silence speaks for itself.
Oh, the silence, yeah. We're not getting any evidence of physical geometric sphere-edge horizons, and when they're presented and assumed to be physical and geometric, we point out that there's an argument in place called the black swan. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
No.
That could also be debunked by the black swan.
Black swan.
The
right.
Earth radius evidence, it's a bit like gravity in the sense that if you calculate it into existence, it becomes proof for some people that think that calculation is some kind of evidence.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of said presupposed spherical Earth?
Just P waves and S waves in it. If I draw you a little pretty diagram around a sphere and then claim that there's no other way it's possible, then people will just accept that that's true. But ultimately, it's still just a diagram with pretty pictures on it saying that that's true, and that's the standard of evidence if you're a belather.
Well, beyond the presupposition of a sphere that's being drawn in a depictorial example of P waves and S waves, the P waves and S waves aren't actually that accurate. Quite the contrary.
It's not a presupposition, Nathan. It's impossible on any other shape because of the reflections.
The inaccurate predictions that P waves and S waves make are impossible on anything other than a presupposed spherical surface. That's fascinating. Moving on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? And hello, Brian.
It is everyone.
So
Very well.
how can you have a distance to something you don't know what it is or where it is, if it's tangible?
You
Just
can't.
calculate it into existence, and then once you've calculated it based on something, then we can just basically claim that that's good enough because it was close.
Any evidence?
You've said in,
Go on.
You've said in the past that all the distances to anything has to do with Earth radius being correct if we were a sphere, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Venus.
Okay. So since Black Swan shows we're not a sphere with a radius, then there is any claim of distance to the sun is based on what?
Based on a nonsense that's been debunked.
There you go.
More to the point, the Black Swan shows that it would be impossible to ever calculate a radius of anything
Correct.
because they're using the horizon.
That's correct. Yeah, there's no geometry
No,
to a
Nathan.
not actual location called the horizon. That's correct, Brian. The Black Swan demonstrates that you can't ever derive a sphere. It implodes the assertion that we're on a sphere. It debunks it Correct.
We should go back over that distance to the sun one, Nathan, at some point, because that evidence for the application of Kepler's third law with the Cassini and all the other stuff, it was worth going through that again, because like I don't think enough people have seen that and realise how the distance to the sun is just a nonsense argument.
More than happy to. We'll cover it after your important issue that we're going to cover at the end of the housekeeping, after we find out if, and there may be some evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container, given that the fundamentalist religious zealots who believe they're on a spinning water ball think that the sky is a vacuum.
Well, flat side showed that that's not a possibility in the past 24 hours. So,
Okay, tell me more.
a flat side showed gas inside in a jar, and when he opened the top of the jar, the gas left it.
Oh dear! How do you know there was definitely gas pressure in the jar in the first place?
Because you could see the gas.
What gas was it?
I'm not sure. You have to ask flat side that. I don't know what
Did he-
type of gas it was.
Did he bottle a fart? Is that what it was?
I'm not sure. You could see it. It was smoky. Maybe it was smoke. I'm not sure, but he showed that it didn't stay.
Smoke's not gas.
container was-
Smoke's not gas. That's
Yeah,
particulates.
I'm not
Doesn't
sure what
count.
it was, but he definitely did a demonstration.
You can do it with a bottle of pop. If you just shake up a bottle of pop, there's pressure inside it. You open it and it goes psst, and then you know that there's pressure coming out of it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, if you leave that bottle there without the top on it, it'll end up being flat. You won't have any.
Oh, why does a bottle of pop go flat without the lid on? Entropy. That's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
That's literally how I describe it to people that don't know anything about thermodynamics or anything, and they understand that. It's very simple.
That's because it's so that makes sense.
It's just a description of something that occurs always. When it comes to natural laws, that's all they do. Describe something that occurs always. Anyway,
Your jokes are so damn rubbish.
jokes.
I think they're on point. I mean, when he
Come on,
said-
you missed it. I said, so damn rubbish, soda. So damn rubbish.
You can't.
Terrible.
You can't
That's
use
so
soda
loose.
twice.
It's a kind of.
There's rules to this.
Look, the entropy in the punning is getting really bad. At some point, it's not worth it anymore.
I know, I agree.
Well,
Okay.
glad
Any-
you don't pay my bills.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No.
We've had Travis on for a while, have we?
Gravitational anomalies in a tunnel in a mountain.
If they do claim that it's less gas will be pulled down by 9.8 meters per squared second. It's a second squared, is it not?
They do claim that. They say gas go down, go boom, boom, like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. That's correct.
Were they able to observe this and have a hypothesis on it and actually experiment on this?
No, that's fundamentally not how gas behaves. But however, you can take a solid that's bonded and pour that into a fish tank and assert that that's what gas, which doesn't behave like that because it's unbonded and has elastic collisions. You can assert that that is how it behaves when it does not.
So then that would be not scientifically then.
Well, they don't even have the phenomena of gas going down, go boom, boom. They have to engineer that with solids because that's not gas behaviour. Gas expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume it has to fill. Shout out to LV23 for the super chat. Really appreciate the support.
Hey, by the way, is Skype having issues with other people too?
Yeah,
For some
yesterday
reason-
for me it was, yes. Just one more housekeeping question. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Email.
Email is not a valid hypothesis. Or a viable
iTunes.
hypothesis.
Depends on what the email says now, doesn't it?
If it's got a phenomena and
iTunes?
a presumed cause and a null, then yeah. If not, no. Whoever that was in Discord, go ahead.
What,
Yeah, I
what about
looked into
iTunes?
this. Sorry, George, go ahead.
What about iTunes?
No, I was
No,
just
that's
saying,
iTunes,
yeah.
not a phenomena. No, go ahead, George. Or Crit.
Yeah, I looked into this more, and there's actually something interesting. They call it the rare Earth hypothesis. And they explain that Earth is so unique and so out of the fringe of anything else they observe that they completely factor Earth out 100%. It's not even included.
Oh, I know even why. You know why? Because everything you see up there, it's all like spherical and all. So, well, the actual Earth is flat. So the Earth is being flat is the only exception in their assumption of what everything is.
No, what they're actually doing there is they're absolutely admitting that the globe Earth model has absolutely no relevance to reality whatsoever. That's exactly what they're admitting.
Correct,
there.
Brian. Again, 2 for 2. Exactly. Yes, that's what it's saying. It's saying the model of a sphere Earth in a vacuum spinning violates natural law. So we just won't consider that model when we're talking about reality. Well, that's nice. A bit like natural law, eh? Natural law doesn't concern itself with violations of itself that are fantasized into reality by pictures from the TV screen. It just describes things that happen always. That concludes housekeeping, Anthony, if you want to take it.
Light of the Earth, isn't it?
Oh,
wait,
hold on. Was that, hold on.
Question about Skype?
Go on, whoever that was it Crit? And then Arwin afterwards? No?
Oh, no,
No.
go ahead, sorry.
No, it was George. I was just kidding. I was citing Rumpus. It doesn't apply to the Earth.
Oh, yes, indeed. When he's describing his model of Earth, he would say that the second law doesn't apply. Well, it can't apply because they've got a natural law violation directly in contravention of the second law, so they just don't apply it to the model. That's correct. Not joke, that's absolutely what they'll do. They'll decry that it should apply to Earth in their vernacular, meaning their model. Go ahead, Arwin.
Right. So is anybody else experiencing like this bizarre font rotation where in Skype I literally can't read what anything is saying anymore because it's using this really bizarre font?
No, I haven't not noticed that it's in Swahili or anything.
I don't even know what this is. I'll screenshot it. It's really looking weird.
Can we save it till after the show? Sleeping Warrior, you there? Because I know you want to present something at this point.
Yeah, I'm ready to go, man. Let me change the screen. It's going to get a bit of background noise while someone realizes that the mic's hot, but it's fine. Right, so let's get rid of this. All right, so can you see it, Nathan?
Have you got it up, yeah?
Yeah, you see it, yeah?
Yeah. Once I've got it pinned, I will.
Okay, so basically yesterday I presented a video, and the idea behind the video was to demonstrate that this guy that I was citing was showing what happened in my egg test, to explain visually what the pressure was doing. And it was basically to demonstrate like how the ball earthers are now at the position where they calculate an observed phenomena and think that that's an acceptable standard of proof. But the problem is I can also calculate now the same phenomena, and that makes there's three of us that can calculate the same phenomena, and therefore by their standards of evidence that's acceptable. But if there's three of us that are calculating the same observed phenomena, that makes it correlative, therefore not causative. So in science, we don't correlate, we demonstrate cause and effect. And that's what we're supposed to be pushing is science.
What screen
right?
are we
We're
supposed to be seeing,
pushing...
Anthony? Because what we've got at the moment is just Skype and the Hangout and stuff.
I've got the wrong screen, then let me switch it over. Present screen, entire screen. Should be that little bugger. Should be that.
Okay.
Do you have the
yes
the YouTube
Carry on.
window?
Carry on.
Okay. All right. So this video yesterday was to demonstrate that blurthers think that calculation is sufficient standard of evidence to demonstrate that something's true. They can calculate something into existence, and that makes it true. Now, in the back and forth, it was created by this this response from this guy called Defo Bryso, and he's the pinned comment. So you should go and have a read of it because it shows that he will not consider that calculation is not the standard of evidence. He insists that because they can calculate it, that's good enough. But you've got Einstein that calculates the phenomena. You've got Newton that also calculates the phenomena. And apparently they're both pretty much similar when we're dealing with stuff on the Earth. It gets a little bit obscure when it gets to things at light speed in Narnia. But nonetheless, he thinks that that's an acceptable standard because they both calculate the same thing. Well, guess what? I also calculate the same thing. So that makes three of us that are calculating the observed phenomena. But the thing is, I can demonstrate it. We know what caused the egg to move. It was me adding a little bit of salt. So we know that if we manipulate the presumed cause within scientific method, that demonstrates the proof that something did get caused by something else. And I can demonstrate that. So now we're in a quandary where they can calculate it, so can I. I can demonstrate it, but they can't. What standard of evidence are we accepting? And I can tell you one thing, they're never going to accept that a flat earther has demonstrated something that's basically more credible than science, than Newton or Einstein. I'm just going to be totally dismissed, but guess which one complies with scientific method compared to the others? Me! I'm done.
Cool. Thank you.
I posted the screen cap of the Skype situation.
Okay.
It's really hard to explore.
He had to get it in before the end of the show.
Yep, the Skype issue's going to have to wait. I'm sorry, Owen.
It's in Skype?
The Skype issue's in Skype, is it? Oh, thank you for that. Let's focus on this for 20 minutes.
Well, listen, that's a logical inference. The Skype issue has to be in Skype.
Yeah, but the proof of it is now in Skype. I managed to make a screenshot and dump it in there, so you can see what it looks like.
In Skype of your evidence, I don't
That
see
does
it.
look. That looks like Kryptonian or something. Like, what the hell is that about?
How dare you, Chocolate?
I
You
don't know.
just interrupted a pun.
Oh, and I know that it's in Skype, but if I think of it as that it was in Messenger instead, does that mean that it was then in Messenger because I can think of it that way?
No.
Oh, that makes gravity not a force then, right?
Oh,
What
segue.
is gravity?
Thank God.
Well, I have
No.
something to say on Anthony's.
What's gravity?
Yeah, now we've got 3 people trying to segue, and it seems like Brian's got something to actually add. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Concerning this whole issue that the ballers have, I'll go back to the question I was saying that I would have wanted to ask Rumpus yesterday, and that is to prove mass exists, because in their vernacular, my mass and my weight are equal on the Earth, but when I'm brought to the moon in their heliocentric vernacular, then my mass stays the same, but my weight changes. Now, their whole description of mass and weight being different is only coming from a gravity claim. That's where it's coming from. So for them to prove that mass exists, they've got to prove gravity is what they're saying it is and does what it says it does. And the heliocentric model is what they say it is. And the moon is 238,000 miles away and only 1/6 of the gravity of the globe Earth, blah, blah, blah. Every time we speak about mass or allow them to speak about mass, then we are instantly begging the question for gravity and the heliocentric model. They have to prove that weight and gravity are different. Because if I go to a gym and I pick up 2 dumbbells and each dumbbell is 5 kg, am I picking up 10 kg of mass or am I picking up 10 kg of weight?
This is the where you got to point out that the hijacking of the word weight by science is that by pseudoscience. That's what's happened. They've took the general use of the word weight, and they said it's mass times gravity. Because Rumpus, I can imagine him coming in now saying, "You're a moron. Weight, gravity causes weight." And that's what he'd say. Well, weight is the colloquial that we all use to describe things that are more heavy, right? Well, that's what they've done. They've took the concept of mass, multiplied it by another concept, gravity, and then the results equal the observation, they tell us, and then that's basically by inference or by casual correlation. That's what gravity is. It's 2 conceptual things multiplied together to give you the same the matching of the observed phenomena.
Anthony, can you do me a small favour?
Go on, Nathan.
Sorry, just quickly. Can you just turn your mic level down? I don't know if it's always in +10 or something crazy, but can you turn it down? Because I can hear my compressor kicking in because your line's way too loud. Thank you.
Anthony, on me?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So I already made a video about this months ago, and I detailed how volume can be described and defined as mass. Density is defined as mass. Matter is defined as mass, and we all know that mole is mass, or mass is mole, a calculated amount of matter. Then we have a mass of people. Then you have the mass that the Catholic Church have every week. So we have many different masses, right? But what they're actually doing is when you look for definitions of weight, what you'll get is 2 times out of 3, you'll get gravitational acceleration. 1 time out of 3, you will get mass times acceleration. Okay? But what they're actually doing is they're taking weight and what actually causes weight, which is density, matter, volume. That is what causes weight. So what they're doing is they're taking those things and they're separating them from the word weight by terming them all as mass, and then allowing weight to be defined as gravitational acceleration or mass times acceleration. But it doesn't matter, because without the gravitational acceleration of the mass or on its own, according to their vernacular, there is no weight. So what they're doing is they're separating the two. Weight is caused by density of matter within the volume. That's what causes weight. The amount of density of matter within a volume. That's what causes the weight of an object or substance. So if you want to talk about a calculated weight, that's how you calculate it. Mass is a made-up term that begs the question for gravitational acceleration and allows them, every time we use it and they use it, it allows a division between what actually causes weight and what they claim to cause weight, which is gravitational acceleration.
Then what they do is they push it another step further, and then no matter which, if you go with the 9.8 meters per second or 9.8 meters per second squared, no matter which way you argue that, they'll argue the alternative, right? So they'll say, is that an acceleration or a velocity, right? Now, if you say it's an acceleration, they can then go and find citations that say that it's not an acceleration, it's a continual straight line that is not an acceleration, it is a velocity. But then if you say it's a velocity, then they go and find citation that says that it's an acceleration, and it will give you a curved line. So the 9.8 meters per second squared essentially is they conflate between it being an acceleration and a velocity, and they do that to confuse the hell out of you, right? I had it with a few different topics, angular size being one of them. But the problem is, if it's an acceleration, then there's nothing to stop it from accelerating indefinitely to the speed of light, for example, as an absolute maximum. And then that's the consequence of it being an acceleration. But if it's just a velocity, then the velocity varies, because we know it starts from an absolute velocity of nothing, you're holding it and then let go. So we know there is an acceleration or change in rate in velocity, right? But the problem with it is, if it is an acceleration, then there's no end to it on their model, because it continues on forever, because there's nothing stopping it to slow it down. But that implies that the object will free fall up to the speed of light. And that's an absurd position and we don't know what the answer is, but that's the consequence of it being an acceleration, and they can't have that. So they've got to conflate that argument. So they'll conflate between acceleration and velocity. And no matter which one you choose, they'll argue with citation that you're wrong. So overall, the overall effect is that the point gets totally discombobulated and you don't know what's true anymore. But the reality is, we don't know what happens beyond a certain height, because we don't have a vacuum chamber that's the height of the clouds. But it's an epistemological position to argue or to discuss, because we don't know whether there's an absolute velocity that things can't fall faster than. But I tell you something, if there is an absolute velocity that things can't fall any faster than, why would that exist? Because it indicates that it's a rule of nature, a law of nature set by design by somebody or something that's put a limit to it. Because otherwise it continues to free fall at the rate of the maximum velocity of the speed of light, for example. And obviously that's obscene, but that's the quandary that they put you in, and they make it on you, not them. It's crazy.
Yeah, but what's happening there is, as soon as you argue with them about velocity or acceleration, you're already begging the question for them. They want to argue about velocity and acceleration all day long, because they're arguing about velocity and acceleration of a mass caused by gravitational acceleration, caused by this gravity. They're never proving mass and they're never proving gravity. And that's what they have to do.
They're arguing within the logical.
Yeah, they want to argue about acceleration and velocity all day long. And they make it even an entertaining argument. They'll make it intellectual and make it entertaining, so everyone will enjoy it. But everyone will forget that they're not proving mass and they're not proving gravity. Because to prove mass is to prove gravity. To prove gravity is to prove mass.
They did
they've got to prove one or the other. Sorry?
They did the exact same thing with angular size with me. If you look up the definition of angular size, it is the size of an object from a given distance, and it's usually on Earth. Because you look at the sun and you go, right, it measures X. But it's not just the angle size, it's from the believed position that you're 1 AU away from the sun. or 93 million miles. But it's not just the angle size, because the angle size can put that sun at the size of a pea right in front of your nose, or it can put it at 93 million miles away in a gargantuan size. So, and anywhere in between, beyond, like before and after. So it's an infinitely variable, and that's basically Kepler's third law. It's essentially the ratio between the 2 points, right? Well, that's what they got me to argue within their method. They were arguing that angular size is this or that, and it went on and on and on. But ultimately, once you start arguing about angular size, you're assuming that the sun is a tangible object or a physical object, and you ignore that. You miss the fact that nobody knows what the sun is. They tell us it's a fusion reaction between blah blah blah, and then you've got what's his face, Robitaille, saying, well, it's actually got a solid outer case, and we know that because we can bounce light off it and we can measure that, and that makes it solid. What's the sun? Who knows? But what they'll do to me with the angular size gaslighting, the exact same thing with speed and velocity and acceleration. So be careful if you ever get drawn into an acceleration over velocity argument. There's evidence that goes both ways, citation that goes both ways, and it's a gaslighting attempt because they want you arguing about that, not whether or not things will fall to an absolute maximum or whether they'll get to a point where they'll get up to the speed of light, because that's really that's the limitation of the argument. It's fabulous though.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're arguing about basically the optical size of something that is a light at an undisclosed, at an untangible angle, one bit that's always affected by refraction, and an altitude we can't determine, and then everything. They always leave out little things when it comes to things like the distance to the sun, this angular size of the sun. Little things like below 15 degrees, you can't use a sextant because you can't trust anything below 15 degrees above the horizon because it's all screwed up and messed with. And also we have a limit to our vision in a direct straight line. And that's how the sun ends up looking. It ends up looking, due to optical drop, ends up looking like it's directly in a straight line with our eyes. But it's just a case of it's moving further away from us. But whatever it is, we only know of it as a light that gives heat or causes heat. And we don't know exactly what angle it's at because of refraction. We don't know what altitude it's at. So as soon as we start arguing about its angular size, then we're already talking about how it's some kind of physical object at a certain distance or whatever, that kind of way. And that's what they want you to do.
Exactly.
Instead of just
that's exactly, Brian. Well, you spot on again, exactly. And when you say, well, it's moving away into the distance, only a minor criticism, but it appears to, right? Because otherwise we are in danger of doing the same thing when we describe it in those terms. Now, minor criticism, because other than that, exactly, they want you to reify it into physicality. Same goes for the horizon. My only other criticism is, Anthony, could you just back off your mic another couple of inches as well? Because you're popping it and stuff with you. You're just a bit too close to it. You've turned it to the right level now, but you're still a bit close. So it's still a bit too loud, but you pop in the mic when you're talking to it. It's because you've got a good mic. Anyway, yes, Brian. Yes, Anthony. Spot on. And it is glorious.
Well, yeah. The danger that we fall into is doing the exact same thing as what they do with pseudoscience, because we have proponents on our side that pontificate around the idea that there's a downwards acceleration bias, and they claim that it's because everything falls down, but then infer that there's some kind of other force doing it, just the same way that gravity is some other kind of force doing it. And ultimately, unless you can demonstrate it by manipulating it to demonstrate the cause of the acceleration, then you are doing the exact same thing that they're doing. But the problem is, when you're on our side, dare you challenge anybody that's pushing this downwards bias thing that isn't actually there, that can be explained by demonstrating that aerogel, that light blue stuff, is 6 times more dense than the medium of air, and that's where the perception comes from. So it's not actually a bias, is it? It's just your ignorance because you don't accept that all solids are more dense than the medium. Woe betide anybody that questions anybody on our side for preaching the same pseudoscience, because we get walls put up around us, people stop talking to us, and people say that we're shills or whatever. But the reality is the same rules apply against us. If you're going to assert that there might be a bias in some way, and you ignore the fact that all masses are more dense than the medium because aerogel tells you that as a matter of fact, then you're unfortunately doing the exact same thing. So don't do it.
Well, the way you address that is by highlighting what your dependent variable was in your test. Well, your dependent variable isn't objects go down, go boom, boom. It's that objects appear to displace in various directions. It's not, some things, to put that into more simplistic language, some things go up, some things suspend, some things go down, right? That's the phenomena that you're studying, not objects go down.
Some things go sideways.
Yeah, some things go sideways, precisely.
Smoke goes sideways.
Exactly. So in other words, there's displacement in varying vectors. Well, that's not objects go down. So they engineer in a false DV and then assert it with things that do go down. It's like, well, that does, but what about the medium that it's moving through? That's got stuff that's going up. In complete contradiction of the claimed phenomena that they start claiming causes of with maths. Well, no, you don't have it in the first instance, and the dependent variable in your test exemplifies that, because it's not objects go down, go boom, boom.
The other thing to point out is that with that egg that went up in the world, in the vernacular, if it goes up, then that would mean that the force that they insist is pulling down on mass, because mass is meant to attract mass, for some reason it had a day off and it pulled on the medium instead, which caused an upward thrust that they call buoyancy. And I've tried to get them to explain what made gravity decide whether to pull on the medium, the egg, or have a day off and pull on the density of the gradient instead. And I've never got an answer that's suitable. They just completely ignore it.
It's because you can't.
But the egg went up.
Well, exactly, because the egg went up, it stands in violation of their claimed phenomenon. In other words, things don't just go down. It's not a bias. Your phenomena demonstrates that. And upon variation of the cause, of the effect, validated through experimentation, you can establish the cause of why it's going, what was that you said, up? So you're not even validating things going down and the cause of it when you're looking at why an egg display is getting displaced. Well, that's got nothing to do with the assertion that things go down. In fact, it's absolutely flying in the face of it. So when you say, well, they don't give a justification for why it has a day off, it's like things that are always, or a bias, occurring in all things, or as they sometimes assert, well, the gravity is natural law. Like, no, well, then it would be occurring always. You'd require a description of it. You wouldn't have any examples that absolutely fly in the face of it. That's why you can't give an explanation why gravity took a day off. It didn't. It doesn't exist.
So just to re-emphasize the point, aerogel is 6 times more dense than air. Some people say it's 15 times more dense than air. I guess there's variations in how they make it. Point is, it's more dense. That negates the perceived bias, because there isn't a perceived bias. It's just an ignorant position that you don't realize that everything else is more dense than the medium. And alternatively, yeah, my egg that I dropped didn't go down, did it? It floated. And then when I did something else, it went the opposite way. So Nathan's quite right to point out that the bias perception is not there, because not all things go down. Because even Newton's third law states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for everything that goes down, according to Newton's third law, there's something else going back up the other way. So that tells you that the Mother Nature is a balancing act of some kind. It's all relative to each other. I don't want to use the word relative because I know some people will instantly ascribe Einsteinian theory of general relativity to me by doing it. But the point I'm making is that if there's an equal and opposite reaction and something's gone down, then the other thing that's gone back up again means that not everything goes down. So that's 50% of the perceived phenomena disappeared anyway.
Well, I have to say something there, something that you said there a few minutes ago, Anthony. You said mass is supposed to be attracting mass. No, it's not. Not since 1915. Mass is not attracting mass since 1950. And I know you're only going by their vernacular, but this is more the same thing again. They have a speaking about something that's not even current. Even NASA have caught on. Even NASA have changed their vernacular. I like that word today, vernacular. Even NASA have changed their vernacular on what causes the tides. Now NASA have, because it was read out last night on Brandon's show, that the boy Travis, not Travis Eaterban, the other Travis, I can't remember his YouTube name now, but the other Travis, and you all know him, and that they are talking about how the ocean currents, or the oceans, because there's salt water, they conduct electricity. Now, I already made a video about this, and what NASA do is they bring it to a certain point, and then they leave it all out in the air as if it's all a big mystery. And you can and Travis Eaterban made a good point when it was read out. He said you end up just going what and walking away from it, right? Even NASA have accepted that the moon is not controlling our tides. You know, these people we're dealing with, what we're dealing with mostly is people who spend their whole lives copying and pasting answers, right? Whether it be verbal or written, they're copying and pasting answers. And they want to keep talking about mass attracting mass. It's over for that stuff. It's over.
I
It's
want to
been
know.
over since 1915.
I know you know, Anthony,
So the-
and yes, we all know you know, right? It's a point you make quite sternly, but nonetheless, Brian is on fire today. Let's be honest. Absolutely, right? It's 106 years out of date, not in their current pseudoscience, and it doesn't surprise me that they're saying they don't have a clue why it's not the moon, and the reason is because they can't calculate it with Einstein's maths.
exactly.
I didn't say that I knew. I said I want to know if, and this is a genuine question, if the sun is supposed to be 400 times bigger than the moon but 400 times further away, does it have the same, on their model, does it have the same gravitational pull? Because if it does, because it's like that infinitely variable scale, then wouldn't that therefore equally affect the tides? And the sun, therefore the moon and the sun together might be influencing the tides,
No.
but not the moon on its own?
No, like I've just said, this is something that we've laid down as a challenge because it's not calculable with Einstein's field equations, right? You can only do it for one mass. As soon as you introduce, well, how does the other mass? Well, no. It doesn't work like that. Hence, we've said, well, okay, give us the field equations and how they work for these two masses, Moon and Earth. And you can't. That's the bottom line.
There's something about Einstein's theory of general relativity as well. The description that he uses for gravity being an effect. He uses the word mass and he uses the word effect. Now, Anthony, I suspect you'll probably argue with me about this, and I'm happy it'll make a good show. But something I want to point out about that, and I have pointed it out before to you, Anthony, and maybe some of the other people here on the panel, he never defined what he meant by those two words. He just threw those two words in there. He didn't state mass, what he meant by mass, and effect. He never defined this effect. So what is the effect he was defining? I mean, what is it he was speaking about? He never said. He just added gravity in because everyone believed in it.
But by not defining it, you're able to then infer or invoke orbits, because that's the effect. He needed orbits, and that's where Einstein got orbits from. And if you can get orbits, then you've got a heliocentric model, and that's how they did it.
Are you talking about moving along a geodesic?
Yeah, the geodesic path remains straight in Einsteinian relativity, right? However, you can think that it's a curve, or you can think it's a force of attraction because it warps the curvature of space-time. It curves space-time. But that doesn't make it true. Just because it might seem to match the observation, he still says that the geodesic path remains straight. Well, that to me is like an embedded confession.
Okay, what warps space-time in his vernacular?
The uneven distribution of mass. So in the case of the planets, the moving planets in his model is the orbit, but he admits that it travels straight, not curved. We perceive a curve that we would perceive because of perspective, but he calls that the warping of space-time, and he calculates it. So if he calculates it into existence, it becomes a thing, because that's what they do. If they need something, they'll just calculate it into existence. But we would call that perspective, and essentially that's what he's done.
So, yeah, but if in his field equations, he doesn't account for any more than one mass. So how does he account for orbits?
Because he claims that the geodesic path remains straight, that we perceive a curve. So if you've got a straight line in the sky, but we're perceiving that it's curving, then you've got orbits. If you haven't got orbits because they're not actually curving, it's perspective, then you've just got things going across your field of vision in a straight line the way we perceive them. So then you haven't got orbits, you've just got things moving above your head, and it doesn't imply heliocentrism.
Yeah, well, if you take the basics of what he's claiming concerning the effect, right, that is gravity, what he claims gravity is an effect, then, but this is something I asked before, and I couldn't get any correct answers on it. The moon, in his belief, warps space-time, the Earth warps space-time, the sun warps space-time, etc., right? But an effect is an effect. You don't have different strengths of an effect. the gravity, the claim of the moon in the heliocentric model being 1/6 of Earth's gravity, that's out the window, because gravity as an effect is just an effect. And I mean, there's no defining of whether that effect is more or less in accordance with the size of, I have to use the word, mass. So
of course it is.
gravity
It's
on the
defined
moon,
in the field equations to be more. The greater the mass, the greater the curvature. You idiot.
greater the
Yeah, but
mass, the greater the curvature of what?
Space-time.
Yes, what about, I'm speaking about the word effect, Rumpus. So don't call me
Yes,
an idiot,
the
because you're the
bending of
one who came in here
space-time
with the
is an
wrong
effect.
argument.
The bending of space-time is an
Please.
effect.
The
It's
effect
cause
is
and
gravity.
effect.
Is
All
gravity
effect
an
means
effect
there's a
or a
cause
force,
of it.
according to Einstein?
So you have cause and effect, and the bending of space-time is dependent on the mass. The amount of bending is dependent on the mass. So the effect is the bending of the space-time. The cause is the amount of mass.
Stop.
But
Stop.
hang
You said the
hang on. Hey, speaking to me. Hang on 1 second, Anthony. So the effect that's known as gravity, right? Gravity is known as an
Well, there
effect.
are two effects. There are chains of effect. Like when I press a switch or something drops, there's a sequence of events that occurs, and there's a sequence of causes and effects. So the mass causes the bending of space-time in four-dimensional
Let me
space.
speak, Anthony.
And
I'll ask
then,
you again,
in our
Rumpus. I'll ask you
3D
again.
world, that manifests
Is gravity
itself
an
as a
effect
force.
in the theory of general relativity?
You overtalked me, so I have no idea what you were saying.
Is gravity an effect in the theory of general relativity?
The attraction of mass to mass is an effect. Yes, it's the result. The cause is the bending of space-time.
Gravity, I'm speaking
and
about.
the force.
Gravity.
Let me
Is
finish
that
my
termed
sentence.
as an
and
effect in the theory of general relativity? You're not answering my question. You're answering the question I didn't ask you.
The effect.
Do that again and you'll get kicked out. Right, you're not going to do that here.
Jesus Christ.
Get one
let me
chance.
finish
Do that
a
again,
sentence.
get kicked out.
Fine. I mean, if I can't finish a sentence, there's no point in being in here.
Okay, get lost.
All I was trying to do was finish my goddamn
Okay,
sentence.
get lost.
Yeah, okay. Right, you can kick me out if you want to. That's fine. I was going to
Do that again and I will. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Hello, in a conversation. Hello. If you do that
I've got a
again,
question for Anthony.
I'll do it again and you'll get kicked out. Simple, Rumpus. There's your warning.
Fine,
You won't get another one.
That's fine. That's fine. If you want to behave like a little Hitler, that's up to you.
I'll do what I like.
So I was going to ask Anthony a question that might be interesting
Please answer
to
the
him.
question.
Okay, what's the question again?
The question is, in Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, is gravity termed as an effect?
Well, he calls gravity the bending of space-time. So that's an effect of mass. So mass bending space-time, he says, is gravity, that bending of space-time, and that's caused by mass. And then that in its turn causes an effect in our 3D world of a force between masses.
No, hang on.
So there are a series of causes and effects.
Wait. You're adding things to Albert Einstein that he never said. You're starting to add in the word force. Now,
have you read any of his work?
Can you let him finish, Rumpus? He's started talking and you've decided you're going to interrupt him.
Well, how about
all right,
him
Rumpus.
interrupting me then?
Stop. Hey, Brian.
Thank you, Nathan. Rumpus, this is the point. Albert Einstein never defined what he meant by the effect of gravity. He never defined any of that. You're adding things to it.
He did.
That he never said.
defined,
He never spoke about a force
the
of gravity.
bending of space-time as the result of mass.
Okay.
He made that
just
explicit
bear with
in
me a second,
equation.
Rumpus. Sorry, Rumpus. Bear with me. So did he therefore justify what you described as pseudo-Ramonian force space manifesting in the 3D world? Did he detail that? Can you cite him describing force space manifesting in 3D space? Can you cite that?
Yes, he gave a letter, one that Anthony actually quotes quite often, in which he says, everything I've done is entirely in agreement with Newton's laws. In other words, the force of attraction between mass. He said it was entirely compatible with Newton's laws.
Could you please post that letter?
I can do that.
Oh,
I've got a question.
Come on, everyone be calm. Calm down. Hello.
And also,
we're getting to it, Rumpus. Thank you.
That I've presented to you. I've also presented to you, and other people have in this panel, of the way you can use how Einstein's field equations reduce to Newton's laws in the case where you're away from a black hole or you're not moving at the speed of light. They reduce to Newton's laws.
Let me ask you this question then, right? If I take Einstein's most famous equation, which is E equals mc squared, and I change it, is that still Einstein's equation?
No one is talking about changing Einstein's equation.
Here you are.
You are talking about changing these field equations.
Do you understand the limiting case? If I've got a very complicated equation and half of those terms go...
Hold
Can
on,
I
Brian.
finish my goddamn sentence?
No worries.
If
Hold on,
you
Brian.
have a complicated equation, and in situations that apply to black holes and moving at the speed of light, and you're not moving, and parts of those equations are only relevant to that. So if you're not near a black hole, those things go to zero, and you're left with Newton's equations in the simple case of being on the Earth. Go ahead.
Now, I'll ask you again, if I change E equals mc squared, can I still claim that that's Einstein's?
No one's suggesting changing E or any of Einstein's
You are
equations.
talking about... Hang on. Okay. In Einstein's field equations, he doesn't account for any more than one mass. Gravity as a force is mass attracting mass. So you're bringing a second mass into his field equations that isn't there. And you're claiming that they are still his field equations.
Right. The mass bends space-time, as was put by Wheeler, I think. Space tells mass how to move, and mass tells space how to bend. So they are mutually responding to one another. So in Einstein's field equations, he described... Oh, let me finish, for Christ's sake. In Einstein's field equations, he describes how space-time is bent, and he also describes how, by the texture of space-time, how mass will move in the presence of a bending space-time. So as Wheeler said, mass tells space how to bend, and mass tells space how to bend, and space tells mass how to move. That's how it works.
Thank you. Just bear with me a second, Brian. Just bear with me a second. So in Einstein's field equations, then, does it describe how one body of mass is calculable as attracting another body of mass in the equations?
Well, it doesn't attract it. In Einstein, doesn't talk about attraction. He just bends space-time. And then...
Is that a no? Just need a no. So when you say that they're translatable, he can't even calculate one body of mass attracting another body of mass in the field equations.
Einstein's equations reduce to Newton's laws.
That's not what I asked. I asked if in Einstein's field equations he could calculate for one body of mass attracting another body of mass.
His equations don't talk about attraction. They just reduce...
Sorry, well, in Newtonian, they do. They talk about mass attracting mass, so they don't seem translatable.
But his equations are four-dimensional. But when you reduce them to 3 dimensions, then they become forces.
Okay, so in Einstein's field equations, if they're translatable into 3D space, which would have described in Newtonian terms mass attracting mass, can you calculate one body of mass attracting another body of mass with Einstein's field equations? Yes or no?
Yes.
Show me.
Because they reduce. Okay, I can. You've seen the paper before. I'll go and get it.
Sorry, are you going to now describe how you're going to reduce something to actually calculate it with Newtonian maths?
Yes.
No, I'm asking for it done in the field equations by Newtonian. No, by Einsteinian.
There's another word that he really means to use when he says reduces down to Newtonians, and that word is correlates, not reduces down. Einstein's field equations correlate with Newton's equations.
No, they reduce down. There's no correlation. They reduce them.
But can they do the same exact equations? Can you do the claim that mass attracts mass in Einstein's equations?
Is when you have 2 independent things and you measure one of them. That's when you call...
No, 2 of them at the same time. One mass attracting another mass, as is claimed in Newtonian.
Right, I didn't really hear what you said then.
Yeah, well, shut up and listen. You know you're pummeled. Right, let's just take it as a statement. No, you can't calculate for 2 bodies of mass with Einstein's field equations.
Yes, you can.
What, by reducing them down to the Newtonian?
Here we go.
By reducing them down to Newtonian, you've already told us this.
You're not letting me answer.
Is it going to be that you're going to reduce it down to Newtonian?
God. I'll say it again. In Einstein's field equations, you can have as many masses as you like, and that tells you how space is bent. And then when you go into the 3D world...
No, that's not Einsteinian. Einsteinian's 4D. What do you mean when you go into the 3D? I'm asking in the 4D, equations used by Einstein can you calculate one body of mass attracting another body of mass? The fundamental premise of the Newtonian maths in 3D space. Can you do that in the 4D maths?
In Einstein's 4D world, things do not attract one another. No.
So you don't have mass attracting mass in Einsteinian then? So they're fundamentally different then?
Correct. In the
Enjoy the aftertaste. That's right, they're fundamentally different. So when he claims they're translatable, he also claims that they're fundamentally different and then attempts to talk through me pointing that out when he's just confirmed it. Don't know why you're talking through me. For the love of God, can you shut up? I will protest in some dramatic way like you do when I point out that that's correct, Rumpus. Yes, that's right. No, you can't calculate mass attracting another mass in Einstein's. Well, that's the premise of the Newtonian maths.
No one has claimed in 4D space there's a mass attracts mass.
Well, that's the fundamental premise of the Newtonian, and you're claiming they're translatable into each other. So you're saying that one fundamentally can't do the one that the other does? Well, that means they're not translatable, you idiot.
They are. When you go.
Well, then why can't you do a mass attracting mass equation with Einstein's field equations then?
Because that is four-dimensional where there is no attraction.
Oh, I see. So in 4D, you don't have mass attracting mass like you do in 3D, but yet they're the same. No, they're fundamentally different then.
Correct.
Yeah, I know I'm correct. So these two aren't translatable into one another. Yeah, very useful you being here to tell us that 4D and 3D are different geometries. Yeah, we already know.
You're trying to fit a cube through a circular hole, and it doesn't fit. And you're just saying, look, in the other dimension, it does fit. Well, it makes no sense.
I can show you how, when you translate it into 3 dimensions, it becomes...
I don't ask for 3 dimensions, though, do I? I ask for it done in Einsteinian 4D.
But you live in 3D.
I know, so we don't live in Einsteinian worlds, then? Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's right, Rumpus. We don't live in a 4D Einsteinian world, now do we?
No, we can't.
No, we don't! You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. We do not live in the pseudo-world of Einstein. You heard it from a fundy himself.
We can't perceive it, but there is a 4D world out there.
Oh, you've just told us that we don't live in it, but we can't perceive it, but there is a 4D world?
Correct.
Were you delusional? If we can't perceive it, it doesn't exist. Are you delusional?
We don't have the imagination to understand it.
Oh, we need imagination for this delusion of yours, do we? Can you shut up in Discord? G+, can you shut up? We need imagination for this fantasy of yours, do we?
You need to have an understanding of maths, and you need to have an
maths is abstract. We're talking about physics and the physical reality. And Einstein isn't that.
Show that it's true. You can show that it's true by physical things.
Oh, really? Can you show one mass attracting another mass in 4D pseudo-Riemannian force space? That would be Einstein's field equations.
No one says that it does.
Well, according to you, it's the same as 3D time and space being the same as 3D reality, but yet you can't do it. Well, then they're not the same.
That's why one's 4D and the other one's 3D. They're different.
So they're different things then, yeah, and we don't perceive or have a 4D world. That's not perceivable, right, according to you?
Around in it. We can't move around in it, correct.
We can't move around in Einsteinian 4D pseudo-worlds. Yeah, we know, it's not real.
But you need to have some intelligence, and you need to have...
Oh, it's me being too thick. Is it your time over? Move to the ad homs.
Well, I just thought you... Well, that's the problem here. If you could understand...
Oh, so it is moved to the ad hom, so let's kick him out. Didn't take the subtle hint. No, I'm not going to listen to your ad hominem attacks on me. Piss off. You can get out now. You've been absolutely annihilated. Let's make it plain what Rumpus has conceded here. No, you can't describe mass attracting mass. Can't even be calculated with Einstein's 4D phony space-time. Can't even be calculated. He's admitted it. Why? Well, because 4D is not 3D. They're completely different. But yet he simultaneously claims one's translatable into the other. When you ask him how you can do it, he'll say, well, I'll just use 3D. I'll dilute down the fact that I'm just using the 3D mechanics when saying that it's doable or doable in a mathematical construct that doesn't even exist. According to him. Yeah, we don't exist in space-time. It's a concept. Yeah, admitted here by your fundy priest Rumpus.
I thought we just got a first quote of 2021 there, Nathan, from the Rumpus. We'll have to trim it out a bit, but didn't he just say, yeah, I know we live in 3D space, not Einsteinian 4 space?
That's correct. He conceded we don't live in Einsteinian 4D space-time. That's right. He conceded that.
somewhere out there.
You simply don't have the imagination for this, so that's the problem.
Well, that's what he admitted, that the only way the Einsteinian 4D is through imagination. He said it.
Just before it's lost, I just want to point out to the audience that since 1915, Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity has been and is the currently held description of gravity by mainstream pseudoscience. Mass attracting mass is 106 years out of date.
Not only that, the conclusion where we started, right? So we can come to the full circle conclusion. There's an assertion in regards to the moon that it's causing tides. Somehow that's still part of your heliocentric rhetoric. And yet the maths of Einstein couldn't even calculate that. Can't even make an attempt to it. It doesn't work with more than one mass. Yeah, 4D phony space-time that you all think you live in? Yeah, you don't. And when it comes to your claims that things like the moon are causing the tides, your maths, your reified maths, that abstract language you're using to describe this stuff, it can't even calculate your claim that the moon is attracting the oceans. Can't even calculate it.
I've got a question on that for Brian, Nathan.
Yes,
I think I heard another admission from the Rumpus there, where he was saying, basically he admitted that in Einsteinian, you can't have any movement. Any calculation can only be static. It's just a static position. That what you can't calculate any movement in the Einsteinian. That's the purpose of the reduction, for want of a better, or having to move it out of that pseudo-Romanian force space, because the maths can't do it. It can only cope with stationary.
Certainly sounded like that was a confession he made. There was quite a lot of interesting things that came out of today's discussion with Rumpus, some of which should have sent chills down the spines of people who believe in a sphere Earth. You know, things like you haven't got the imagination for it. Oh my God, if I was a Glober, that would definitely send chills down my spine. Quick shout out to Julio Pabon, who says 3D into 4D definitely not doneable. I think that was one of my verbal slip-ups that he's referring to. Thank you very much for the super chat there, Julio Pabon. Really appreciate the support.
It was right after he said somewhere out there is a 4D world, and I said in imagination land, and then that's when he repeated it. Yeah, you simply don't have the imagination. Yeah, thanks, Rumpus.
I wanted to address.
We can't imagine it, and we can't calculate it. How do we know it's real?
We don't. It's not. It's abstract. It's merely a description in an abstract world that doesn't exist. Go ahead, Anthony.
I wanted to point out his contradiction, because he's told us for the longest of times that the definition of weight is mass times the acceleration due to gravity, and it's measured in newtons. However, if you remove the gravity as a force, then you're left with just mass. And he's always told us that mass is just a scalar. It's just a number, right? It doesn't have any. It's not a force. It's not measured in newtons. It's just a scalar, right? Yet he admits that mass attracts mass. Well, that means that it's not a scalar. So he thinks that on the one hand, it doesn't attract mass. He thinks that on the one hand, mass attracts mass, therefore is a force. And then on the other hand, he says that it doesn't cause acceleration. You need gravity for that. Contradictions much.
Contradiction that...
out of what... Sorry, Nathan.
Go on, you can have the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, answer me question.
I will in a moment. What I took out of what Rumpus said, this should answer your question, Adam. What I took out of what Rumpus said today from the questions he was asked was that he couldn't define the effect of gravity as determined by Albert Einstein. And he also couldn't show how the effect would be different just because a mass was of a different size. He couldn't show any of those things. He couldn't define the effect that Einstein was speaking about, and he couldn't show how that effect would be more or less depending on the size of a mass. He couldn't show how that would happen or not happen. Does that happen?
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, or joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a Premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't catch that part. There was some of it I didn't catch because he was speaking through what I was speaking and through what Nathan was saying. So I didn't catch some of that. So you might have caught it from listening more than I did. So maybe I didn't answer your question correctly.
But it can't, can it? It can't calculate for movement. So that's the.
Yeah, but I mean, the old adage that mass attracting mass is causing orbits and causes things to supposedly fall to the ground and us to go around the sun and the moon to go around us and to control our tides. That's all out the window because they don't have mass attracting mass. Now, Anthony has spoken about Einstein's version of an orbit, which makes no logical sense from what I can see. I could be wrong, but basically what I got from Rumpus was that he couldn't answer what the effect termed by Einstein was. Einstein never defined it, so all you can do is make something up. He never defined what he meant by mass within what he was talking about or what he meant by effect. And
he attempted to. No, let's just correct that. What he does is he has to immediately move to the 3D world and say how it's translatable. That's what he does at that stage.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm speaking about within Einstein's theory of general relativity. Rumpus couldn't define what Einstein meant by the word effect. He also couldn't show in any way, shape, or form how a differing size mass, I have to use that word, I don't like it, would change the strength of the effect. If you understand what I mean.
Well, I'm still right, and I'm still going to assert the same thing, and that is, in my opinion, why it's got the same title, even though it's a totally different thing. So at that stage, when it can't be done in Einsteinian pseudo-4 space, that's where you've got the same word, so you can just equivocate and start describing the mass-attracting mass, which is what he needs at that point, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, at that point, he has to go into reducing. I see he calls reducing. I call changing Einstein's field equations to come up with a mass-attracting mass ideology. You know,
yeah,
I totally agree with
that's
that.
the point that you've got him in the corner, because he's got to do the bait and switch. He's got to change what is effectively superseding or replacing the original mass-attracting mass assertion into a maths that can't even calculate for that. And at some point, because it's got the same name, he'll just use the former rather than the latter.
Yeah, but that's the thing about it. As soon as he starts going into that, I want to always bring him back to the current. What I was going to ask him, but obviously his behaviour was out of line, so he got thrown out. But the last thing I was going to ask him was, what is the currently held description of gravity by mainstream science? And he has to say Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, which is not mass attracting mass. He has nowhere to go. Keep on bringing them back to that. Not that I'm saying anyone should argue with him. Shouldn't argue with him different or debate him different. That's not my business. I'm just saying, keep bringing them back to what's really going on in his model. If he wants to go back to an old adage that's 106 years old, out of date. Sorry, 106 years out of date. He wants to keep on going back to that, even though that's out of date. Even NASA have accepted that. You know, with their description of the tides, they don't speak about the moon now.
Right, because they can't. In terms of Einsteinian mathematics, it's incalculable. So why would they talk about it? Leave it part of the just so story fairy tales that are out amongst the normies that just perpetuate this nonsense. Just leave it out there. Don't correct it. Don't talk about it. Don't highlight the fact that you can't calculate it with Einstein's maths. We'll do that, though, all day long. While they say, oh, well, I just go back to the 3 space. Well, what about doing it in 4 space? Well, you can't have mass attracting mass in 4 space. What? No, they're the same, are they? One being mass attracting mass, which you can't do in 4 space. Oh, right. Sounds very different to me. It's because it is. It's because it's just total different nonsense. The new hotness, as Chocolate calls it, isn't hot. It's just another pseudo nonsense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That's why I want to, I have been doing it, and I want to keep on doing it. And that was the first time I got to do it live with Rumpus. Was that define this effect that Einstein speaks about, that is called gravity? They can't define it because Einstein didn't define it. He never defined what he just said. And gravity is an effect caused by the curvature of space-time by mass. Although he said it slightly different. That's the basics of what he said. It's like,
well, he did define it though. He did say gravity is the effect of the curvature of space-time. The effect being the curvature of space-time.
And what's gravity?
The effect of the curvature of space-time.
Yeah, but what is it? What is
the bending
effect?
of space-time?
Okay, what's the effect? How do I?
What is the effect? That's what he's trying to say to you. So the cause of the effect of the bending of space-time is the uneven distribution of mass. So there's your cause.
Correct.
Right? So your effect is what's termed gravity, right? That effect called gravity. Well, what is gravity? So you're asking the wrong way around. Anthony's saying, well, the bending of space-time. Well, what's that? Well, no, what's gravity? Well, according to the current rhetoric, it's the bending of space-time.
So it's not. So the effect, for me to observe this effect, I'm supposed to believe that the bending of space-time is the effect, and the effect is not things falling to the ground.
That's trench level speak. That's what he did here when I say you've got him in a corner. What he does is the effect of bending of space-time is mass attracting mass.
Oh yeah, but I don't listen to any of that nonsense.
Yeah, but that's what he's effectively saying.
Yeah, but he's wrong. But I don't mind. He can say it all he wants. But I just keep on to get where he's wrong. Keep asking the questions to bring him back to how he can't. He has to make it up. He has to make it up. These people have to make it up because Einstein didn't define it. He just said all he said was the word effect. That's it. He never defined what the effect was. Show what is this observable effect. You know, is it supposed to be where a star is supposed to bend around the back of the sun?
No. This is where this is where your bait and switch comes in, and you start asserting your force of attraction with mass attracting mass. That's what happens with you. You can take it off into the illogical of what they've then no longer got in force space, but that's not what they actually do. What they then do is, against a lot of resistance from us, try and dilute that down into 3 space, where mass does attract mass, and you've got a force you can assert. Well, but they've both got the same name, right? Both called gravity.
Well, yeah, but I mean, at that stage, I have to ask him then, you know, if I change the equation E equals mc squared, will it still be Albert Einstein's equation?
Yeah,
and they will have to say no.
Exactly. That's where we got to. As a comparison, if I say that this equation is now going to be used as this equation, something totally different. In this case, I'm not going to use Einstein because I can't assert there's a force and mass doesn't attract mass. I can't even calculate for it. But I'm going to use Newton. Well, is Newton the same as Einstein? Yeah. Well, wouldn't you fail to actually calculate anything attracting something else with 2 bodies of mass in Einstein? Yeah, that's why I'm going to use Newton because they're the same. That's what they do.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're going to keep on trying to bring it back, but every time they try and bring it back, I just ask them the question. So, what is the currently held description of gravity by mainstream science? And they have to say, because they can't not, it's Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity. And does he account for any more than one mass in these field equations? They have to say no. And then they're going back to, but we can blah, 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 blah. If you change that, if I draw a mustache on the Mona Lisa, can I still claim it's Leonardo da Vinci's? No, he didn't put a mustache on the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, we had this last time.
It's great. But I messed with it afterwards.
It's a great analogy because the response from the Fundy by analogy would be, it's how he would have drawn a moustache on the Mona Lisa. It's how he would have done it. And in fact, here today, I've got a letter where he describes how he would have put a moustache on that Mona Lisa. So it's how he would have done it. It's how he would have wanted it. I can divine his thoughts.
Yeah, I know. But that's what they have to do. They have to try and divine Albert Einstein's thoughts, isn't it? That seems to be what they have to do.
Exactly.
Nathan, you can extend it because what they actually mean, they'll do it and go, he was such a visionary, he knew that the Sharpie marker hadn't been invented then, so he was waiting till science got to a stage of the Sharpie marker so he could understand it to somebody to put that mustache on.
Yeah, he knew how he would hold his pen because it has to be done in a Sharpie marker to make it culturally relevant. So he would have described how the Sharpie would have been held because he knew all about it. But he would have done, knowing that I know how he would have felt about it and that I know about Sharpies, then I know that he would have taken into consideration how the wrist must be held when using a Sharpie to draw a moustache.
That's exactly what Lou did. He built into the future in his model a way in which his art could be merged with the Sharpie marker and it'd be exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Well, they said to him, right, when they were looking into their crystal ball and raising him from the dead so they could ask him these things, they were like, look, right, if you were in a position where you didn't just have 3 dimensions, you actually had this pseudo fourth that was time, yeah? And in those maths, you couldn't actually calculate one body of mass and another body of mass at the same time. How would you do that in your maths where they can? What would you do? And his response through the crystal ball was,
what I'd like you to do for me in the future is to reduce it and pretend it's exactly the same if you could.
But that's what I was going to say. But with a more spooky voice, just use my maths.
It's just nonsense, isn't it?
Indeed. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and becoming a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.